Welcome everybody, my name is Cliff and I have MS. If you saw my last episode, you might know that we moved from Chico, California to somewhere east. And now I'm going to let you in on the secret. We ended up moving to Austin. You might be thinking to yourself, why in the heck would you go from Chico, which is hot, to Austin, which is hot? Well, at the time, I didn't know I had MS because I hadn't been diagnosed after 10 years of seeing doctors in California. And we had to get out of Chico to keep our sanity. I didn't know that the MS was an issue with heat because I wasn't diagnosed yet, but we knew we wanted to pursue better career opportunities and better affordability for our lifestyles. And I had lived in Texas when I was young. My wife had never lived in Texas, and I assured her that Austin would be great because it was a booming tech hub and there was a lot of opportunity for us, and we could actually afford a house for the first time ever. However, staying in accordance with the other practices I did on the other videos, which are linked below, both Chico and San Diego, what I did on this one is I printed out what Google told me when I asked it, is Austin a good place to live if I have multiple sclerosis? And the reason I did it this way is because if you have multiple sclerosis and you want to think about other places to live, you're probably Googling it. So I wanted to head Google off at the pass, go over what it returned in terms of results, and also discuss my experience and compare and contrast, if that makes sense. So let's jump right into it. Again, the question is Austin a good place to live if I have multiple sclerosis? Google says back, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to whether Austin is ideal for someone with MS, but here's some information to help you decide. And the bullet points it gives me here is, first of all, supportive community. First bullet point is Walk MS. Austin holds an annual Walk MS event, National MS Society Walk MS Austin is what it's called, raising funds for research and showing community support for those with MS. Second bullet point, resources. The National MS Society likely has a local chapter in Austin that can help you connect with MS specialists and support groups. All right, let me comment on that first part here. So Walk MS and resources. Yes, Walk MS is there. It's awesome. I did it. Was a little hot. We'll get into that. And the resources are definitely there. The MS Society has a big footprint in that area because there's some big funding folks. There's Google, there's Apple, there's Tesla. I mean, there's all kinds of different companies that really like to do community outreach and help fund things. So there are a ton of resources. I was part of a couple of the groups, the MS group for Austin, which was huge. There was like 50 people in it. And what was great about it is, since there was such a wide swath of people in it, you got to see people affected by MS that were in their teens all the way up to people that were late into their 60s, and how MS affects those folks and how they took different treatment directions to deal with their MS, what they did with their lifestyles, what they did for a career. It's a strong, tight community, and it was pretty awesome. I met a lot of quality people at those events. So they're well supported, and they are definitely active. One of the really cool events that happens in the Austin area is the MS 150, and that's the MS Society's big event of the year. It's a 150-mile bike ride over 2 days, and I participated in that as well. It was phenomenal. They don't just understand the disease, they understand the person with the disease. And the way they set up that event and made it just second to none was awesome. Like when I would show up at the finish line, I rode my e-bike because there's just no way I would make it 150 miles now. I used to be able to do that, but the MS has progressed too much. So e-bikes are fine. And it was still a ton of fun, though it got very hot. When I would show up at the finish line, they had cold showers, they had massages, they had great food, air-conditioned tents. And when I mean they understand the person with MS, they know what someone with MS needs after doing something like that. And that is rest, relaxation, and nutrition. And they had that all covered. And it wasn't just bare minimum stuff. I mean, it was world class. I felt like a king when I was in their presence. And my friend who was riding with me was just recently diagnosed. She was being treated like a queen. I mean, it was really cool. So from the events that they do there, they're best in class. That's all I can say about it. And I've done these events all over the country, and these are really awesome. Now, the only thing they got going against them is the weather. The weather in Texas is very unpredictable outside of it just being hot. And the day that we rode, luckily we got some rainstorms, but it also became very hot in the afternoon. And I'm going to have some footage of all this on a different episode. I'm just going to do on the MS-150 because I documented my experience and it was really neat. And I certainly encourage you to subscribe so you can see that when I post it, because it was just phenomenal going through the countryside and seeing the differences in the trees and the weather and the riders. Just really cool stuff. So we'll talk about that. So yes, Google, you're right. Super supportive community. And it comes from having great healthcare providers to having great 501c3s to having great events. I definitely felt very well supported there. Okay, now, secondly, Dear Google, is Austin a good place to live if I have multiple sclerosis? And Google says, climate. Bullet point number 1. Warm weather. Austin's warm climate might be appealing for those with MS who experience stiffness or fatigue in colder temperatures. Let's clear something up. Austin is not warm. Austin is like third level of hell hot. There's nothing warm about it. Warm is like Waikiki in December. Austin is like living inside an active volcano. It's like Mount St. Helens, only you're standing in it. It's just crazy hot, and I can't even express to you how insanely uncomfortable that is with MS. If you have MS, you know, but if you've never been in an atmosphere that's like 80% humidity and still 115 degrees, you feel like you're gonna die. I mean, anybody's gonna feel like they're gonna die, but with MS, you feel like you're gonna die sooner than the person next to you. And that was constantly the case. Now I think it's important for me to put this in perspective. So instead of just my biased reaction to the heat, I'm gonna tell you how hot it was in Texas based on records, why I lived there for 1 year. And this is 2023. We left the year of 2023. I'm reading this verbatim from Google search. Central Texas has experienced its hottest summer on record in 2023. Austin saw a total of 80 days with 100-degree heat and 40 days with temperatures over 105 degrees or higher, and received less than 1.5 inches of rain from June through August. Now, if you are okay with spending over a third of your year inside because your MS reacts to heat like mine, Austin might be for you. I'm not okay with that. I'm an outdoors person. I want to be doing stuff outdoors. And there's a lot of stuff to do outdoors in Texas. It is a fantastic outdoor playground. There's a lot of open space, though a lot of it's private. If you know people, you can play on it. It's not built out like California or some of the East Coast cities. There is room to stretch your legs and do some really fun stuff. But if it's so hot you can't go outside, what's the point? And what this report's not telling you is while it says 80 degrees with 80 days with 100-degree heat, it's not telling you the actual index temperature, which includes the humidity. So on many days of these 80 days when we were there, it was over 115, including the humidity, and direct sun exposure on the skin at that temperature feels like 132, if I remember correctly. It felt like hell, but I think if you quantify it, it feels like 132. So if you're like me and your MS is not a big fan of heat and it decides to make you blind, piss your pants, lose feeling in your legs, lose your ability to actually think straight. I don't even know what I just said there. So if you're like me and heat really affects you, then Austin's probably not your place. I mean, one of my first symptoms of really progressed MS when I moved to Texas, which I had never had before, was I started pissing my pants. More than my 2-year-old. And that's when I realized there was something dreadfully wrong happening. And actually, Texas is where I got my diagnosis. Now let's jump into healthcare, because one of the points that Google says here, it says other factors to consider. Medical care. Look into the availability of neurologists specializing in MS and healthcare facilities with MS treatment experience in that area. Okay, let's hop into that one. Yes, fan-freaking-tastic. I, for 10 years, never had a diagnosis in California because I couldn't talk to anybody for longer than 15 minutes. However, in Texas, I went to UT Health in Austin, who has a dedicated, they have a dedicated multiple sclerosis and neuroimmunology department. It's world class. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And my first meeting with a neurologist there lasted almost 3 hours. They wanted to know everything. And by the time I left there, I had a team of nurses whose names I knew, a therapist to talk to, and a doctor who would respond to me within a day, if not within 24 hours, usually within the hour or 2 hours after I sent an email. That was like unheard of as someone who came from California. Like, even to get 15 minutes with a specialist in California seemed like a struggle. And at that, it would be 6 months out. I booked this appointment within 2 weeks. I was there, and I got the diagnosis I'd been seeking for years, for a decade. And they were like, yeah, plain and clear, you got MS, and this is a serious issue. You're highly progressed. We need to get you on the most effective treatment right away to stop this thing. We can't fix it, but we might be able to stop it. And they were very truthful with their approach. And I appreciated that. So yeah, they have great healthcare in that area. You can't go wrong. And I hope it stays that way, because they treated me as a patient with MS who had symptoms, but they treated me as a person who was a patient with MS. And they treated the whole person. They didn't just treat the disease. Too many times have I been somewhere where they're like, well, okay, you've got this disease, or I'm sorry, you've got this condition, throw these pills out or this medication out, you're good. That's not how they approached this. They were saying, people first, profit second. Let's figure out how we help people deal with these conditions. They're chronic conditions. They're lifelong. There's some serious mental trauma that goes along with this disease, and you know it if you have it, because it's a life-changing beep show. Most importantly, the message that came out of being part of that department was, this is not a battle with MS, because it's a battle that cannot be won. We're not at that point yet. The research is not there yet. There's nothing that's going to fix MS. It might stop it, but it's not going to fix it. So there was this underlying tone of, MS is going to be like an annoying relative that shows up who has like a completely destructive lifestyle, and they crash on your couch. You kind of have to deal with them. You don't really know when they're going to be there. You're not going to be able to get rid of them because they're family, but you can learn how to set boundaries and manage them. Google says look into it, the availability of it. I can tell you, unless it's changed in the last few years, I'm talking last 2 years, it is world class. At least UT Health is just phenomenal. The people are there because they love what they do and not because they're making huge paychecks. I don't know what they make, never looked, but I can tell you they love what they do, and that makes the biggest difference in the world. Okay, and I think they're treated well. Now let's talk about some things it doesn't mention on here, but I think are very important to touch on, and these are related to accessibility and livability. When we moved there in 2018, we got to buy a house near a lake. And that was awesome. It was affordable. Like I said, I wasn't diagnosed yet. However, my wife was able to have a job. I was able to step away from any of my career stuff to reduce my stress level based on what my doctor said. He said, you've got to get rid of any controllable stress out of your life. It will speed the progression of your disease if you don't get your stress under control. So we were okay with having one income, and not even a huge income at that, and we owned a house. It was fantastic. We bought a small house, and we had control of our future for the first time. We never had that in California because there was just so many things that were out of control in terms of expenses. And Texas was affordable. The healthcare was affordable. The wages were decent. Tech startups were happening all over the place. There was lots of opportunity for my wife. And for me, I could do some contracting, but I became a stay-at-home father the greatest joy of my life. I never thought that was something I was going to want to do, but it was just fantastic. I can't even say enough. It was just the coolest experience, especially in Texas and especially during a pandemic. When everybody was locked down, we had lots of open space to stretch our legs and deal with the nuttiness that was the pandemic. So it was very affordable. However, there's always a however, right? As soon as I give good news, I got to slam it down with bad news. Things have changed. This morning I went on Redfin and I looked things up because I keep talking to people in Texas. They're like, oh my God, stuff's getting just insanely expensive. You know, Apple opened a facility there. Tesla moved there. Google and Dell are doing well and they're both there. There's a lot going on in that area. And these prices reflect that. So in 2018, we were able to buy a house on one income. And not even a huge income, like I just said. In May of 2019, the median home price in that area was $392,000. By 2024, May of 2024, it was $587,000. Now this is starting to feel a lot like California without the nice beaches, because there aren't a lot of people that can live, families that can live on one income at $587,000 per house, included with high interest rates and high gas prices, high grocery prices, high insurance prices, everything that's going on right now. I don't think it's affordable anymore, and even if I didn't have a heat intolerance, I wouldn't move back to Texas for this reason alone. The tech bros moved there and a lot of stuff happened and things got insane. So basically, a lot of folks from California moved out there and started paying cash for places because they were selling their places for 3 or 4x what they paid for them. They could come in strong above asking price with cash. And as a conventional loan at a high interest rate, a first-time buyer, you just don't have a chance. So that wouldn't have been appealing to us in 2018. And we certainly would have never even considered the area if that was the case. But that is the case now, and that's something that needs to be considered. Now, if you have MS and you're on disability, this place is now expensive. This Texas place is now expensive. And I say this place, I don't actually live there anymore. We moved on. That'll be in the next episode. When we looked for a place to move, we considered weather as our primary factor, school as the second, didn't even really worry about jobs because we can work remotely. Yeah. So if you can guess where we moved, comment below. You don't win anything, but you know, maybe you'll feel better about yourself. I don't know. But I will say it's working out very well. So keep an eye out. Make sure you subscribe and like this video if you found it useful, because if you subscribe, you'll be updated when I update about where we live now. And if you have MS, it might be very interesting. But I want to really package it well together and give all the details so nobody makes any rash decisions based on me just blabbing. Yes, so that being said, if you have MS, Chico's probably not a good spot. Austin's definitely not a good spot. And San Diego's not affordable and the healthcare sucks, so that's not a good spot. Those are all just my experience and my opinion. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. And stay tuned, because there's another episode coming, and it's going to be good. Thank you for watching.